This is Leah Steele. Welcome to the Wealth Witch podcast. Just a few years ago, I experienced complete financial collapse. We lost a business, our home, and a car. My husband was selling plasma to pay for diapers and formula. I was living a life I hated, and I was miserable. It was the lowest part of my life. It ended up being my biggest blessing. Just a few short years later, I've designed the life of my dreams. I live a life of luxury in beautiful Bali, Indonesia, travel the world, and spend my days helping others manifest wealth and abundance. Living a purpose-led life changed everything for me. This podcast is about my journey, my top tips and tools for manifestation, and interviews with all the amazing, world-changing, inspiring people I meet along the way. Welcome to my world. This series is really just all about becoming wealthy, and I wanted to interview people on their journey and on this process. And the purpose of it really is to I want you to see what this journey to economic and energetic freedom looks like. And I want you to see it from as many different perspectives as possible. I really want you to see that this is a lifelong journey, and it is a process, and it is making a commitment to showing up for yourself and doing the work and continuing to face the things as they come up along the road, and that it isn't perfect and that it often is very messy. In fact, the journey is amazing, and the journey can be just as rewarding as the destination. You never reach the destination if you're truly doing this work right, is what I believe. Right. And so that's what this interview series is about. And so I'm really excited to have Kari here. So I just want to talk to you a little bit about your journey. And I think, similar to the question that I asked Mallory yesterday, it's like, where were you before you found me, before you found this work? Like, what was happening in your life? What was going on? Tell us a little bit about where you came from and what your money story was.
Yeah, well, it's really interesting because you and I had been connected for a while, right? But we really never interacted. And I was kind of doing my life and you were doing your life. And then, a couple of years ago, I got divorced and it was the best decision ever. And now we're best friends. But then I found myself unexpectedly pregnant and everything was kind of imploding. And any story in my life that I thought shame or doubt or fear was attached to, that I thought I had released, was coming up, just so extreme financially, with this unexpected pregnancy, with this guy I'd been dating for 5 seconds, There's just so many things that just weren't okay. And I saw Ouroboros and I was like, you know what? I knew I needed something, and I knew I needed something different. So round one of Ouroboros, I was pregnant with her and just was really, I had pregnancy depression, and I was, I had run through my whole savings because I wasn't working, because I was so sick with her. And I was really dealing with the fallout of a lot of emotional stuff and physical stuff that was being manifested because of that, not just financially, right? But in my health and in my emotions and in my relationships and in my beliefs about my own self-worth, really. That's one of your biggest, currencies of wealth, I believe, right? Is your own self-worth. And so going through round one and then going through round two, it was there was so much that came up, especially with the generational stuff. There was always this, you have to work really hard to get anywhere, right? There was really this, to be a good person, you work really, really hard and then you can make a little bit of money. And I was like, wait a second, I've always known that I don't subscribe to that, in theory, but it was still so stuck to me. Do you know what I mean? It was still stuck in me, even though I didn't want to believe it. And I found going through Ouroboros and releasing a lot of the generational stuff and releasing a lot of the stories that I found were keeping my self-worth tied down and almost in debt on the self-worth level of things, as well as releasing a lot of the beliefs that I thought I wasn't attached to, that I totally was, you know what I mean? Has now resulted in, one, I feel really good about myself, not just on a superficial level, but even on a health way. This is the best I have looked. This is the best that I have felt. This is the best my self-esteem has been. And realistically, on paper, I should be freaking out about life, right? And yet, because I'm not attached to anything anymore, I've been able to create space for literally opportunities to drop in my lap. I mean, the hosting gig that I had you on, that was the second round of that show. And that show literally dropped in my lap, like right after we started round one of Ouroboros, like out of nowhere. And it's like, it was my dream gig, you know, to do what I love to do. And now I'm having an even next higher level opportunity that just dropped into my lap that is completely in my wheelhouse with my strengths and gifts and passions. And it's, again, it's at like that higher pay scale, doing what I love to do and not leveraging my time for money as much. So there's just been this really unique transition with finances and health and emotional wealth and well-being and self-worth. And there's just, I mean, there's so much to even go into. It's like, where do you even start? Because everything has changed and nothing has changed all at the same time. Like, it was always there, you know?
Yeah. Once you say you're all in, it's go time. And so, you know, I'm excited to interview you today and to talk to you, because I think for you, what I've really seen is like, you absolutely have been one of those people that, like, God, divine source, all that is, whatever you call it, has literally been stripping away everything that's not serving you.
Yeah.
And like, you've been really uncomfortable, especially in the last few months. You've really just been handling everything that's happening in your life with such grace. But maybe you could just speak to that, because I know that, like, I know you feel that way. I know, like, you definitely feel like everything that's not serving you is literally getting stripped away from you.
Yeah, I've had many conversations. And, you know, obviously I've reached out to you, like, and just like falling apart, but not really falling apart. And that is the biggest thing that I have noticed is it's not even like accepting how things are going. It's more like surrendering into believing that there's something better, and knowing like, hey, I keep talking about these things, right? I keep talking about conditioning. I keep talking about programming. I keep talking about limitless possibility. I keep talking about, you know, miracles and miraculous change and living by faith instead of fear. And, you know, but guess what happens when you start to talk about those things? The truth of the matter is, it was really a lot of letting go and surrender and recognizing, like, any distraction is really what it is, right? Anything that I wanted to distract myself with or deaden myself with, you know, maybe in the past, I really put myself in a position that those were not options for me, which then just, you sit in the ick, right? Like, you sit in the ick and it's like, this feels really uncomfortable and this feels really ugly. And this is what, like, oh, wait a second. I've been talking about faith versus fear. The truth is, right? Like, if you really want to live by faith, your life is not going to be boring. It's not going to, like, be consistently the same, like, time in and time out. And it's not going to be like cute. Like, then you're not, I'm sorry, you're not really living by faith. Like, you're not. If it's messy and ugly and chaotic and you're like, what the hell's going on? Oh, now you're living by faith because you've been stripped of everything you were attached to. You know what I mean? So it really put me in my place, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, it's like that saying, like, it's not faith until the 13th hour has come and gone and you're still believing. Yeah. Like, faith isn't like, you know, you believe something and then it comes like right on time. Like, that actually is not faith, right?
At all, right? But like, I remember when I was younger and something would go, like, I would have a vision or I'd get a download and I wouldn't know at the time necessarily that it was like a download or channeled or whatever, but something would come through and I'd move in that direction and then something would go sideways, right? As it inevitably does. Like, and I would get the message from the feedback from the people around me, be like, oh, don't you think it's a message like that you're just not supposed to do X, Y, or Z? And I'd be like, oh, maybe that is a message. You know, it's not. That's total BS to keep us playing small. That's total programming and, you know, conditioning to be like, nope, just kidding. You thought you wanted that. No, just stay over here. Just stay over here. You know what I mean? And I remember being like, going through this process and recognizing that and seeing that and being like, okay, when things go sideways, it's not because what the vision that I received, because I would receive visions from God or directions or opportunities. It's not that those aren't meant to be, right? It's like, you're breaking through all of the things that are keeping you stuck and small. So you got to step up bigger.
So I've been sort of like really diving deep into this idea of like survival of the fittest, because there's this part of me that like, I really don't believe that God tests us. I don't believe that the divine God source universe, I don't believe that we're tested in a way that's like, how bad do you really want it? Like, prove yourself. Like, I don't believe that that's the case.
No.
But I do believe, and I do think that there is it's like we have to go through the worthiness and deserving rite of passage. It's like there is this foundational piece of like, we have to fully feel worthy and deserving. So what I believe the universe or God does is testing us, not to see how bad we want it, not to make ourselves prove ourselves, but God is testing us to see, do you really feel worthy? Do you really feel deserving? Because if you don't, that's not going to be successful. You're not going to be successful in building that multi-million-dollar mansion if you don't have the foundation of worth and deserving. And so that's where I believe like God comes in and goes,
right.
Let me throw a little curveball here and see, do you feel worthy? Do you feel deserving? And if you don't, it's okay. It's not like, now I'm going to punish you and this horrible thing's going to happen. It's like, no, now I'm going to give you another lesson. I'm going to give you another opportunity to step fully into worthiness and deserving. And then once you get to that point, then you're going to move on to the next. And it's like, for me, it's like, it feels like this like survival of the fittest. It's like, if you've gotten, like, you have to be fit enough to move to the next stage. And if you're not, it just means you need to get stronger in that area, right? But you don't get to move on to the promised land if you feel like a piece of shit about yourself.
If you don't believe that you can receive something, then it's not going to work. You get another opportunity to learn it. But I do also think something else though too, because I do think that when we are stepping into that next level for ourselves, whatever that is, that it's also the programming around us being like, wait a second, like you're tapping, like you're moving from this programming, you're moving from this conditioning, like it's like that, breaking that glass ceiling in a sense, but within our own framework, right? So it's like, wait a second, like you're bumping up against something, and it's because you were operating from this old system, and now you're no longer available for that old system.
Yeah, I would love for you to just talk about some of the wins that you've had, whatever those are that you want to share.
There's a lot. I mean, there's probably even more than I've documented. There's probably even more than I remember, but I remember from round one, I had that hosting gig fall into my lap, right? And it was the first time that something's come to me that I can actually remember, something pretty major in my wheelhouse, literally falling in my lap. It's the first time I can remember that ever actually happening for me. There was a lot of drama around her birth and who was going to be there and just like on that side of things. And I just remember kind of like all of it falling away and being like, well, what do I really want? And really allowing myself to create some new boundaries, right? So a lot of stepping into this self-worth piece ended up looking like creating a lot of boundaries around people that I hadn't created in the past. I also remember all of a sudden I was receiving these large amounts of money. There would be this huge check that came from somewhere. Like that was round one. And then round two, we had her, right? She was a part of round two. She was out and about. And I unexpectedly got asked to host the second season of that show, right? And I was home with her and nursing every 5 seconds, and had the other two kids home all, and yet somehow I just like I remember having like physical energy, like I remember having clarity of mind. I remember, you know, prioritizing and not judging and beating myself up or stressing out about things, which would stereotype. I mean, in a normal situation, you would do that, right? Like you just gave birth, you're home with 3 kids that are little all summer, like you don't have like a regular job, like you don't even have childcare, right? Like you would normally be like losing your shit. And for some reason, there was this sense of peace and there was this sense of presence. It really allowed me to be present. I wasn't so much focused on the past. I wasn't leaning into the future. I had gotten this really great opportunity that I had been promised in the fall, which completely fell apart. But in the moment, that's what I thought I had, right, for a financial gain. And I was able to be present in a way that I know I couldn't have been prior to this. And the biggest thing for round 2, I'll say, is that round 2 continue to move me in a direction, not just of self-worth, but being able to integrate all the pieces of me, right? And so before, like her fussing right now would have stressed me the out. Like I would have lost my damn mind. I'd be bright red. I'd be so embarrassed. I'd be having anxiety. Like it was like, wait a second, like I just like I am a mom, and it doesn't change like the other gifts and skills and talents that I bring to the table. And it doesn't take away from like my value as a human, and it doesn't take away my value from my work. And for me, that was a really, really big thing to be able to integrate it all and to not hold on to that like really intense judgment that was then keeping me stuck and keeping me frozen, because I didn't just not choose to, couldn't integrate everything because of all of the attachments to everything. So that was, I would say, the biggest thing. And again, like my physical health, like this is the best I have physically been in years, you know. This is the most clarity I have had. Like I don't question myself anymore. I don't doubt myself anymore. And that has allowed me to receive opportunities.
You know, it's interesting. Like I want to touch on what you're talking about with the motherhood and the worthiness thing. And I think like it's so important. And I welcome with open arms, like any woman that is pregnant or expecting or like is early in motherhood to come into my programs. There is absolutely programming around motherhood and working. And, you know, I talked about this on the interview yesterday. It's like, Ouroboros is a wealth repatterning program, but it's not just a money program, right? Absolutely. Right. Do you get financial and economic freedom from participating in the program? Yes, because that's one component of wealth, but it's not just a money program. It is an overall wealth repatterning program. And as women, especially as mothers, like we have been very conditioned, one, to just not feel worthy. Like to not feel worthy and to not feel deserving. And, you know, there is this piece of like having to sacrifice for everyone. We're definitely taught to put everyone, especially our children, before ourselves. And then there is this thing around the perfection, right? Where it's like, if I'm not doing it right, or if I'm not doing it the way that I perceive people think the perfect mom is doing it, then it totally spins us out. And then it sends us into this like downward cycle of shame. And so, you know, like I love, like when I was being interviewed by you, it was so amazing to me that like you have Malia there, like you were nursing during the interview that you did with me. And I'm just like, yeah, I'm here for it. Like empowering our mothers empowers our children, and empowering our children creates a whole new reality of experience of life on this planet. Right. And so for me, it's like this worthiness and this deserving. It's like, oh, yes, I am worthy of having the life that I deeply desire. I am worthy of having the business that I deeply desire. And I am worthy of having an amazing relationship with my children. And those things don't have to be mutually exclusive. Like I get to literally be a mom. Oh, that's me. And that is my priority. My children are my priority, definitely over my business. And if you're not down with that, you shouldn't be following me or paying to work with me anyway, because I can guarantee you, once you start working with me, and you know this, once you start working with me at higher levels, you see my kids more.
And I would love to speak to that a little bit more, because I don't actually ever really talk about this very much at all. And I think now that you're saying it, it's really important, which is, so I've got 3 kids, right? So my oldest is 6.5, my son is 4, and obviously I've got Malia, who's 8 months. And my first 2 I obviously had with my ex-husband, and I was married, but even then I remember finding out that I was unexpectedly pregnant with my oldest, and I was like just losing my mind, because I was raised where you get married, you have kids, you're a stay-at-home mom, and that's what you do, to the point where you lose your identity, right? And you don't know who you are, and you don't know what you have. So now I've got these kids, and I'm like, wait a second, like I really had this whole identity crisis where it's like, it's not that I don't want to be a mom, but how do I be a mom and still be me? And how do I still be me and have the big dreams that I have for my business and for my money situation? And then you throw like a new baby, like out of a freshly divorced situation, which again, in my culture and my family background, generationally, you don't get divorced. You don't have kids out of, marriage, and everyone's a stay-at-home mom. And I didn't know any professional women growing up. All the women I knew were moms and like maybe teachers. Do you mean like I didn't know any women who were successful or had their own businesses or were moms and did anything outside of that identity. And so there was a lot of ugly, ugly, ugly work, like really ugly, messy work that got me to this place of stepping into these really successful, roles and being able to stand on my own 2 feet financially. And, and it's still a work in progress, right? Like I'm still working to get to the levels financially that I want to, but I have seen the expansion that comes with that. And I see the clarity and the confidence that has come with releasing all of the struggle that I had because of the beliefs that I brought into my own situation.
Yeah.
But it was not easy and it was not overnight. You know what I mean? Like it was a lot.
Yeah. And it's still
hard.
not easy all the time, right? Like I had a call recently where I was like, where Jack was just like, wouldn't, stop. And it was just, and I was getting really, and it was like, I was sharing something that was quite, I was like fired up about something that was happening in one of my programs. And it was like kind of an impromptu, like I was getting on the live stream to like give a little foot and ass,
Yeah.
And then, so Jack was picking up on that energy of me being frustrated. And so then he was like acting up in the background. And I was in one of those old moments where I was like scattered and I was like trying to manage him and I was trying to do what I was doing and I was frustrated and I was like definitely in my not self,
Yeah.
And so it still happens. Like none of us are perfect. It's a work in progress. Like all of this wealth consciousness work. And this is a part of that. It is one of the most important parts of our wealth is our relationships and certainly our relationships to our children. One of the biggest impacts of doing this work for me has been the difference in the relationships with my children. Because being able to see and step away from programming has enabled me to not blindly program or condition my children.
Yep.
And because of that, our relationship is I have an amazing relationship with my 14-year-old because I'm not trying to make him live up to impossible standards that one, he can never live up to, and two, really aren't important in the scheme of things, and three is literally just programming that's designed to keep him playing small.
Yep. It's huge. It's huge when, and again, my kids are obviously younger, my oldest is 6.5, right? But to learn about who they are and what they need and how they work and support that process. And again, that can be challenging, right? Like my son and daughter are very, very different. They're both highly sensitive, right? They're very highly emotional. My oldest is highly communicative, right? And my son is a little bit more sensory and a little bit challenging with the communication. And so it's tapping into them and supporting that versus what they should be, right? Like what we think needs to happen and being like, okay, what do you need because of who you are, not because of what I want you to do.
Yeah.
And operating from that place is very freeing. And I can't imagine what my parenting, I knew before Ouroboros that I wanted to be a conscious parent, right? Like I knew I wanted to do things differently. I didn't always know what that looked like, but over the past, year and a half, whatever it's been easier to be present. And when I do fall back into the programming and when I do fall back, my kids have learned enough to kind of almost call me out on it. Like, well, why would I do that? Like, that's not what my body's telling me. And I'm like, all right, like, I hear you. Like, I hear you when you're saying to me, like, my body this or is saying this, or I feel this. And I'm like, oh, why was I doing that? Because I was stressed out and I wanted to do something faster to make my life easier, not because it was actually serving you. You know what I mean? Like, so it's been interesting. It's been really powerful, actually.
So I want to talk to this a little bit because I think you being who you are, this is something maybe that you can touch on. One of the things I see is people not signing up for this program because they don't want people to find out that they don't have all their money shit together.
Mm-hmm. Right. It's like, wait, I've worked really hard, right? Like I've worked really hard to present this image that I have everything together, and I totally don't. And if anyone knows, then I'm a fraud and nobody's going to want to work with me and nobody's going to trust me because I'm fake and I'm broke and I'm fill in the blank, whatever you want to say, right? I've been there. Any other area that doesn't have to do with directly with money, you would not have a problem saying, oh yeah, and I'm learning this skill and I'm getting better and I'm doing this. We're like, oh, I'm a nurse and I have my bachelor's, but now I'm going for my master's. Does that mean that you're a sucky nurse? No. Does it mean that you're improving to be better? Yes. Any other area of your life that you want to take to a next level, any kind of support you get, whether it's a coach or a trainer or education or books, or we are willing to not only get support, but promote getting support. But as soon as you talk about money, it's like, oh, I'm getting help on my money shit. Like, oh, I can't talk about that. And it's like, wait a second, you're getting help on your money stuff. Isn't that so great? Not just for you, but for the people around you. Like just like anything else. But yeah, there's all this shame, right, attached to money, and all these assumptions attached to, like, again, the self-worth compared to the financial currency wealth. And it's like, I had to really go through that and ask myself, like, what is it that I'm so scared of? Is it that I thought I couldn't receive, right? Because I thought that if I was getting help for money, that I was broke and I had to be fixed and therefore they couldn't receive. Lie number one. I thought that my self-worth was tied to my money. So if people knew I was struggling financially, then that I was a piece of shit. Lie number two. And I thought that, like, how can I have people charge to, like, for me to coach them on like mindset and strategy when I'm getting like, and when I'm in this program for like wealth consciousness? And it's like, no, that's exactly why I can, because I'm willing to do the work.
I mean, like, this is like one of the things that you'll hear over and over from me. If I am so transparent with my money shit and I'm like, I don't have all my shit together, right? Because it is a constant growth. It is constant evolution. And every time you move the decimal point over, every time you start to earn more shit comes up. Gets easier to deal with once you've done like the deep excavation, but it's like, it's never ending. There is no magic pill. There's no magic, you take this magic pill and then suddenly like you have economic and energetic freedom for the rest of your life. That doesn't exist.
Right.
And so we're all always going through money shit. And when we stay in that place of shame and guilt and not wanting people to know, if I sign up for Leah's program, then people are going to know that I don't have all my shit together. Well, guess what? If they don't fucking already know that, they're insane, because nobody has all their money shit together. Fucking Oprah does not have all her money shit together. Nobody does. Everyone has shit around money, and we all have shit around money because we've literally been programmed to have shit around money. Doesn't matter how much is in your 401k. Doesn't matter how much is in your savings. Doesn't matter what your portfolio looks like. We all have shit around money. We can all benefit from deconstruction work and deprogramming. But I'm literally taking myself through the spiral right now with a money, wealth, and abundance focus. So I don't ever stop doing this work. It's always deeper. I'm always striving for better. If you've got your shit a little bit together, chances are you actually don't. And the shit is going to hit the fan, because again, what happens is we get a little bit of success and then we start trying to build our multi-million-dollar mansion on top of a rotting foundation. And eventually those walls fucking crack and that building comes tumbling down because we haven't dealt with what's at the root. And so there's that excavation process, and then there's the rebuilding process. And then we come up against shit in the rebuilding process, right? And so it's lifelong work, and it is so rewarding once you like get into like the acceptance of, it's lifelong work. Do you have any other questions for me, Kari?
What do you feel like has been the biggest personal reward for yourself on staying committed to showing up and running Ouroboros and being willing to change and, twist and change it as things come up?
Oh my gosh. So the biggest, I think, personal reward for me, it really is seeing the people that are coming out of this program experiencing freedom from the program and like actually experiencing energetic and economic freedom. Like, because I can see when the switch flips, and like actually seeing people going out and realizing that and seeing the tremendous difference it makes in their lives. Like, there is no greater reward to me than seeing people being able to like live life the way that I've been living life for the last couple of years. And it's like, I know what it feels like, but it's hard to explain that feeling to somebody. Like, it's one of those things where it's like, I can tell you what it feels like, but you have no ability to comprehend what energetic and economic freedom feels like until you actually experience it. And it's like, I know that someone's experienced it because they can't explain to me, but they know I know, and I know they know. And it's like every time that happens for me, I'm like, oh, that's my divine mission work. I was just successful. Like, I just made God happy. Like, I delivered the mission work that I was meant to deliver. And this person actually is now on the path to creating their heaven on earth experience, because they actually are energetically and economically free for the first time in their lives. So for me, I think that's my biggest reward. Because I've already achieved it, and I'm always still working for higher and higher levels of it. But yeah, it's just seeing the difference that it makes in people's lives. It's just really seeing them be able to like live their life without the fear and without the, this idea of like always being overextended. Like, the program is designed to keep us always feeling overextended. And like, no matter how hard we work, it's never enough. No matter how much we earn, it's never enough. We're always overextended. Even when we have money, sometimes it's that we have all this money, but we're working so hard. So our energy is overextended. Our health is overextended. Like, there's always a part of us that's overextended. And that is the program. And doing this work and joining Ouroboros and shifting your wealth consciousness work, it's about stopping the overextension.
Yeah.
It's like, aren't you tired of just always feeling overextended? Like, aren't you tired of that? Like, that, I literally, like, I want to be like to every human being on this planet, like, there is a better way. You don't have to feel like this anymore. And in the long run, it requires a pretty minimal sacrifice to get to this place that like changes your entire life.
Yeah. And I think that that's why, like, I was bringing so much attention to like my physical well-being and my emotional well-being and the energy I have right now, which like literally makes no sense how much energy I have or how like I'm physically like looking right now and all of that, because it's all the different areas. And yeah, you always are striving for more, but not from this place of discontent or fear or stress or overextension like you're talking about. It's knowing like, hey, like, I'm in a really freaking good place right now, and I know that I have access to more, and I know I'm called to receive more, and I'm going to achieve that and receive that without doing what the people are doing, right? Which is being and that's how I always know when I'm falling into the programming, by the way, is when I'm feeling really stressed out or I'm feeling really overwhelmed. I'm like, okay, wait a second, what areas have I not been like clearing lately, because it's creeping back in, because that's not how it's meant to be. Like, I'm not forcing myself to be on this awful, like, I'm with my baby 24/7, right? And all of these things. And it's like, wait a second, like, on paper, I should probably be really stressed out, but actually like doing like really good, like genuinely, like really genuinely good in all of these different areas, because I don't have to hold on to all of the stories and all the old beliefs anymore that really weren't serving me anyway, but that I was really wrapped up in because I didn't know any different. And that's the other thing I just want to talk about really quickly is this isn't about like not being good enough. Like, this isn't about having to do more. This isn't about like, oh, you suck at life. This is about, hey, you didn't know better. And now you've heard this conversation, and now you know that you do get to have a different option. Like, you didn't know better before, so you don't have to judge that. And we're not here to judge that and say, oh, you suck at life because up until this point you lived in a place of shame, or you lived in a place of fear, or you lived in a place of stress, or, you're doing all the things you should do. Like, okay, cool. You did. That's true. All right. But now what are you going to do? Because now you know something different, right? Like, now you've heard this conversation. You've heard my story. You've heard Leah's story. Like, what you going to do? Because from this point, you could, once you know, right? Like, that whole ignorance is bliss thing, that's just true in a horrible, like terrible way. But like, that's just true because ignorance is bliss, true. So you could have stayed playing in that playground. Like, you could have played standing in that sandbox, but now y'all done fucked up because now you heard this. So what you gonna do? Like, you gonna come play with us in this sandbox over here so you can move to that next level, or are you gonna get dragged down even further in that one? Because not only did you not know before, but you know now, and so now you're choosing it even that much more.
Yes to all of that. I literally just say yes to all of that because it's so true.
Just yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, and ignorance was so blissful, and then it's just not, So I'm just so thankful that you were here. Thanks for sharing this time. Thanks for asking me all these incredible questions. Thanks for answering. Thanks for being transparent. I'm so fucking excited that you're back for round 3. You always just bring so much incredible energy and knowledge and wisdom to the container. So that's the other thing about this work. Like, I feel so fucking blessed. Like, there's so many amazing humans in this program. So it's a community. It's a life. It's like a lifelong life change.
It's incredible. I mean, these are people from all over the world that you could always reach out to, and they're always going to support you, and you're going to support them without even a thought, like literally without even a thought, because you've bonded so deeply in these programs. It's incredible. A sorority can't touch this. Do you know what I mean? Like, a sorority network can't touch like the community that we're building at all, because it's just that much more incredible.
That's a wrap. Thank you for joining me. Remember, wealth is a mindset, and you absolutely deserve to live the life you deeply desire. And with belief and intention, you create your reality. Until next time, this is Leah Steele, the Wealth Witch.